everything enables shopping, right? Everything around you. So going out and observing my environment while I run gives me a lot of perspective. It's like, okay, there are bigger things out there. The birds, the flowers, it's just very grounding, even if I live in a city.
T-minus 10 seconds.
Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast with your host, Jamila Souffrant. As a money expert who walks her talk, she helps brave journeyers like you get out of debt, save, invest, and build real wealth. Join her on the journey to launch to financial freedom in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Episode show notes for this episode, go to journeytolaunch.com or click the description of wherever you're listening to this episode. In the show notes, you'll get the transcribed version of the conversation, the links that we mentioned, and so much more. Also, whether you are an OG journeyer or brand new to the podcast, I've created a free jumpstart guide to help you on your financial freedom journey. It includes the top episodes to listen to, stages to go through to reach financial freedom, resources, and so much more. You can go to journeytolaunch.com/jumpstart to get your guide right now. Okay, let's hop into the episode. Hey, journeyers. Welcome to the Journey to Launch podcast. Today, I have my favorite type of guest in interview, which is someone who is an actual journeyer, a real life person. I mean, everyone's a real life person, but someone who is actually on the journey, in the thick of it, but making strides. And I love doing these interviews because I just feel like they're hopefully to you as the audience, as journeyers, inspirational and can show you that you don't have to have it all figured out to make progress. So today on the podcast, we have Lori-Sara Gauthier. She is a 30-year-old living currently in Toronto, but has roots in Guinea and Senegal, in Madagascar, which she'll talk about a bit, and currently is a public servant who has a powerful financial transformation journey. She currently works in public health for the Ontario government. She's recently paid off $14,000 in consumer debt. She's tackling her student loans. And she is here to share more of her journey with us. So thank you so much, Lori, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So first, I guess, tell me how you came across financial independence or got into personal finance.
Yeah. So I guess backtracking a little bit, I knew that I had a bit of a spending habit / issue. I think if I had to root it back in 2019, but it was more like a remark and I didn't do anything about it. And then I hit a point of air quote no return in September of 2023 when I realized that I was $14,000 in debt, in credit card debt. And I also had my student debt that I was also paying off, and I had $18,000 left of student debt. And I kind of just had a moment thinking, wow, like my credit card debt is only $4,000 off from what I have left from my student debt. And it just gave me pause. So at that point, I didn't necessarily get into personal finance. It was more like, okay, I think I need to change my habits. So I definitely reeled it in with the whole shopping situation, eating out, the typical, I think, habit changes that people go through when they're trying to reel in their spending. But to be specifically talking about personal finance, so in January of 2024, I was thinking to myself, I'm very bookish. I was like, well, I'm not really off limits with anything that I read. I had gone through a lot of psychotherapy books. I've been in therapy since about 2021. So I was like, well, if I can read all these very triggering books, then surely I can read about money. And I knew about Clever Girl Finance just from the internet. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to listen to that book. So in early 2024, I literally started listening to personal finance audiobooks. Thank you, the public library. And when it comes to financial independence, I think Vicki Robbins' book was the third book that I read. So I read Clever Girl Finance. I read You Need a Budget by Jessie, and then Vicki Robbins. And at the same time, I was also, because I listen and read books in overlap manner. So I just switched. And at the same time, I was also listening to a book called When the World Stops Shopping. And the whole consumer culture kind of rhetoric in Vicki Robbins' book, as well as in that book, When the World Stops Shopping, was very resonant because honestly, I've always been concerned about overconsumption. It's just that my behavior didn't reflect that concern. And then tied with financial independence, I was like, oh, and I have a friend who's an FIer, but he never said I'm an FIer. It's just that I was listening to Vicki Robbins' book and I was like, oh, that's my friend Adam. And it's only after the fact that actually his fiance is my best friend. And she was like, yeah, Adam follows like the FIRE movement. And I was like, yeah, I know about that movement now. So yeah, that was a long way around, but that's the story.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And then somehow you ended up also finding my book, which I'm thankful that was part of your journey too.
Yes. So your book, I read it in this spring. And what I loved about your book was that depending on what spaces on the internet you hang out in, FIRE is a bit sometimes fringe. But what I liked about yours is like, okay, like you can be in the middle. And I think for me, I was like, okay, I think I'm like a shy FI. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's not like all the way where you want to be super frugal and, and again, there are different levels,
Yeah.
It's not just one broad description anymore of the FIRE movement, at least from when I first came in, but I totally understand, which is why I want to talk to more people like you. And I created the platform to show like a different way of reaching FIRE and it's evolving. So thank you for sharing that. I think I want to go back just a little bit. We're going to get into your debt payoff story because I think there's a lot of good things we can pull out there for people to relate to. So you talked about you got into credit card debt. You're, just turned 30, but what your earlier life looked like, because you definitely have roots in different places. And I'd love to hear how that shaped your ideas around money and spending and all that, even education, because that impacts student loans and everything too.
Yes. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about my parents. To be clear, we were not poor. We were never poor. But my parents were very celebratory around using credit cards, especially when we were on vacation. And that was a significant way that my parents talked about money in my upbringing. But at the same time, sometimes they had arguments about the credit cards. So in my mind, money kind of equaled using credit cards, and it was fraught, it was complex. It meant freedom, but it also meant sometimes argument / shame. But with that said, I knew that we were not broke, so to speak, but I guess my early adulthood led me to be credit card broke, in credit card debt and broke. So I guess skipping into my early adulthood, I went to school. I went to the University of Toronto and pursued an undergraduate degree. I took out loans for the degree, and I did not work during school. So I had some pocket money and my credit card. But I also had no money management skills. So I would go to Shoppers, which is for the Americans listening, it's the equivalent of CVS. Just buy a face wash on sale. And because it's on sale, you just feel like you're getting a good deal, that sort of stuff. And that was an emotional response to a sensation of lack in my upbringing. And I know that now, that I've done the work in my late 20s. And so when I started making money after my undergraduate degree, I made enough money, not enough in the sense that I felt like it was enough, but on paper it was enough. So I was also living paycheck to paycheck. And in my mind, I guess at that point, I just hadn't reached the threshold of this can't go on. I have to change. I guess also just to bring up the context where I grew up. So yes, my parents used credit cards, but in sub-Saharan Africa, Guinea / Senegal, the average person doesn't necessarily have access to credit. People live their day-to-day life still very much with cash. So there was a contrast there. Yes, of course, my parents had credit cards, but it's also because we were technically North Americans living in Guinea or Senegal or whatever that. So yeah, it's a bit unique when you look at it this way.
Yeah. So what age did you leave?
I left at 18.
18. So was the idea that credit cards were useful and helpful, or your family or your parents thought it was helpful because it wasn't something that they had access to, or a lot of people had access to back home or where you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly it was just like they had this like cashback credit card and they were just excited whenever they were using it because they would claim their cashback, which they did. They got an espresso machine out of that cashback program. But yeah, so I got my first credit card at 18. I still have it. And the only guidance really that I got from my father was just like, don't use it too much, which can be interpreted in so many ways. So I mostly just didn't understand what it was, to be honest. And it's only through trial and error that I can say that now I understand what credit cards are.
Right. And so are a lot of people, right? You're just like, okay, here's a credit card. You can, what? You have a limit. You can use it. Well, but you're supposed to pay it off every month so you don't get charged the interest. And so one thing you mentioned was that you felt like when you were buying items,
So just a little bit more about my family structure. I was raised by my stepmom, and her parenting style was relatively strict in my point of view. We were discouraged to ask for anything that was categorized in her standards as extra. So in high school, I'm focusing on face wash because in high school, she didn't want to buy me face wash. So for me, in my early adulthood, I was like, oh my God, I can actually buy myself face wash. And going back to what I was saying earlier in 2019, how I realized that I had a little bit of a pickle is because I counted how many face washes I had literally stashed in my bedroom. And I had like 9 face washes, unused, unopened. Yeah. So my response to having the freedom of, or air quote, the perceived freedom of a credit card was I can buy whatever I want. So I guess you can say that it started with face wash and going to Shoppers. But then in my late 20s, 3 years ago, I started running. So I bought like a bunch of running shoes, like a bunch of running clothes so that I can run through all 4 seasons, which is great because now I don't have to buy anything for a while. But I also racked up so much consumer debt doing that. And I had to pay for it. I paid in interest for it.
yeah, that's so interesting, when we think about growing up and how that can maybe impact different people in different ways, because we're all we're all different. And so we can have someone else can maybe have grown up with that experience, but also do the total opposite and then not want to, like, they took that and then used the super discipline or whatever that was on themselves, and they're not used to buying things for themselves. So I just think it's super interesting if we all look back in things in our childhood, good or bad or indifferent, and see how that's impacting our decisions now. Like if we are overcompensating for something or under using or compensating for something, like what that is. And therapy, it sounds like too, like you said, you've been in therapy for a while. That obviously is helpful to help you unpack some of this, because it does impact your money, right? Like sometimes it's like we're just thinking about the emotional relationships we have with people, but that is impacting how we show up in the world and how we spend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that emotion of lack and like, I didn't have this, so I'm going to revenge buy it. Literally, it was rooted in revenge, was reflected in my money. And ultimately, yeah, sure, I was getting revenge. It's true. It's true that I can buy what I want. And I think now it's like, okay, I'm through that revenge arc. And ultimately, this type of behavior will only harm me in the long run because it's truly just a really expensive behavior to have.
Right. At some point, it's like, all right, I know I can do this, but if I keep doing this, it's harmful to me.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I want you to maybe talk about is, so this moment of knowing it was enough, right? So you said, like, you knew the credit card bill was kind of increasing, or it was there, it was an issue, but when did you know, or when did it feel like this is an actual problem? I know, like, what was that changing point for you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. If you're listening, please feel free to laugh. But in the summer of 2023, I noticed that my behaviors were getting worse. So I was ignoring my credit cards. I was not checking my online banking, which I had never done before. And it was really just avoidance. I knew that I was digging myself into a hole and I was avoiding it. And also, it's funny, hindsight 2020, but I would also Google, like, how do you know that you have a shopping problem? Like, I would Google that and like I would read and I'd be like, oh my God, am I doing this? One of them is like, you're hiding to shop or you're hiding your purchases, which it's not that I hid my purchases or hid to shop, but I definitely felt like when I was browsing online or shopping is that I was doing it as if I should be hiding this. It's not that I was hiding it, but I felt like I should not be doing it, basically. I felt like someone was going to shame me about it. So I had all these complex emotions. And then ultimately, I just had to face the music. I was like, okay, summer's over. Time to look at my credit card statements. And that was it. And I was just like, okay, like, there's an issue here. And maybe you should lean in. And also, I guess for context, is that in the previous 2 years, I had actually paid off my credit cards in full, but then racked it back up. So I knew that my behavior had led me into this cycle. And in September of 2023, I thought to myself, I said, if I pay this off and rack it back up, that will be 3 out of 3 times that I did the same thing. And I just didn't want to do that. I was like, no, this is the point of no return. Like I have a lot of like internal dialogue, but it was more like, you have no choice. You have to get back. You have to get to the bottom of what leads you to this situation now for the 3rd time.
Yeah, no, it's great awareness. And that's why I think awareness is like the key first step. So all of us that are avoiding whatever, and this can go in anything in your life, but are avoiding the conversation, avoiding looking, once you are aware, even if you don't do anything, I think most people, though, when they do see it and they are ready to take action, that awareness creates urgency, and then the urgency of the situation, and then the urgency creates hopefully action eventually. So the action, I know you said you cut back and, you stopped going out, but was that switch like, instant? Like, yes. Were you able to stop buying, or so some people, they can go cold turkey, they go on a budget and they stick to it. And some people, it's like, all right, instead of buying $300 worth of this stuff, I'll put $100 limit to it.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So there were 2 things. That summer, I racked up consumer debt going out to eat and shopping for clothes. Big thing. The going out to eat was very easy. It was just like a summer thing. And so end of September came around and I was like, okay, you are eating at home. And I had done this before. So it was more kind of like going back to my roots, if you will. Shopping for clothes, though, much more difficult, because I think the emotional hurt or the emotional angst that leads me to shopping is definitely about clothes. So that was difficult. I went cold turkey, but I did slip up. And I remember it was Black Friday. I was like, I just like bought like running accessories, like mitts and headbands. And I knew while I was doing it that it was completely unnecessary, but it was a self-soothing moment. And then also Boxing Day, end of December, I bought leggings, and now I wear these things. They are in circulation, but now they're like symbolic. They're like, oh, okay, this is the symbolic purchase of I was trying to get better and I slipped up and it's okay. And then afterwards, it was much more smoother. After Boxing Day, I didn't shop for 5-6 months and I felt okay. I'm not saying that it was easy. I still browsed. I let myself get the pleasure of browsing, but I was not purchasing. So I was practicing that self-control, and practice makes better practice. I don't even browse online anymore.
Yeah, I've heard that as a strategy to, that dopamine hit for people who enjoy shopping, but you have to practice the discipline. Like, put it in your cart or put it on your wish list. So you get that feeling of looking at it. Ooh, that's nice. Put it in the cart, but then, don't check out. But you can get that hit without going all the way. Or, the other way is you could put it in your cart, but maybe give some time and space before you make the purchase to make sure it's really something you need, especially if you're doing it like in a time where, you're not feeling good. Maybe you had a difficult day or argument, or it's a coping mechanism that you don't want to make the decision in the time.
Yeah, and just to echo that, it's totally a coping mechanism. It's June 2025. If you've been checking the news lately, it's rough out there. I feel it this week. This week, I'm like, oh, I really want to like buy something, and I have to find another way to cope. But yeah, so all this to say, it's never truly gone. It's just the volume is definitely turned down compared to 2 years ago.
Hey, Journeyers, if you are loving this podcast, then you will love my book, Your Journey to Financial Freedom, a step-by-step guide to achieving wealth and happiness. I wrote this book for you. This book is for you if you want a clear and enjoyable path to having more money, options, and a rich life. This book is for you if you hate your commute and the fact that you need to seek approval or permission from a boss. I hated that when I worked. This book is for you if you weren't born into wealth, you didn't marry rich, or win the lottery, but you still want freedom. This book is for you if you're at a crossroads, a major decision or event is imminent. Maybe a career change, marriage, starting a family. Pressures are reaching a tipping point, and the discomfort and the desire for more can no longer be ignored. And this book is for you if you find yourself zoned out at meetings, looking out the window or daydreaming about the life you truly want. So go pick up Your Journey to Financial Freedom.com so I can show you how to map out how to get from where you are today to where you ultimately want to be and enjoy the journey while you're on the path. Head over to Your Journey to Financial Freedom.com to see where you can pick the book up. It's available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore, everywhere. Go to Your Journey to Financial Freedom.com to get the book now. Have you found a replacement, not a full replacement, but something that occupies your time? Like, so when you feel that now, what do you do?
I browse, but I don't buy. Or I browse and I say, okay, I'll come back next week. Or like, whatever. In the meantime, also, I've started following women's sports, women's basketball. So now my brain space is occupied by the WNBA subreddit, the ESPNW on Facebook. So following these storylines, I use a lot of brain space for that. And also, in the meantime, I am 3 years into running now. So running helps me just get centered. And I think also, like, when it comes to shopping in a consumer society, is everything enables shopping, everything around you. So going out and observing my environment while I run gives me a lot of perspective. It's like, okay, there are bigger things out there. The birds, the flowers, it's just very grounding, even if I live in a city. But yeah, trying to get my mind off of it. Because I do forget about it. Sometimes I see this one t-shirt and I'm like, oh my God, I love this t-shirt. There's nothing special about it. It's just the emotional response of like, I really want this. And then I just find something else to think about and I forget about it. It just passes.
Nice. So you're completely out of that debt now?
Yes. I still have student debt, but I'm out of consumer debt.
Right. And so are you now, is your next step just tackling the student debt? Like, I know it's probably different. I mean, our student debt, it's, going through some changes now with some stuff, but for you, is it just you have to pay it off monthly? Is there you work for the government? Is there a forgiveness with Canada?
There is forgiveness, but not for public servants. I remember looking into this, so maybe I have to re-fact check this, but I don't think there is debt forgiveness for public servants. To be clear, while I was paying off my credit cards, I was paying off my student debt monthly as well. It's just that the pace was just like not as extreme, if you will. So yes, I have about 14 or 13,000 left on my student card. So now that I've freed up some money that was going to credit cards, I've increased my payment amount for my student debt. So my timeline right now is to be student debt free, period, in under 2 years at this time. TBD if I will decide to pay more, like accelerate that. It would be very glamour if I just got rid of it in a year just to avoid paying the interest. But there are other priorities. So just trying to find balance.
Yeah, I mean, that balance is key. That leads me to my next question of your journey. I feel like, again, it's like personal finance where you're paying off debt and doing the right things and saving to maybe buy a house. Like those are like, to me, normal personal finance moves to make if you're optimizing that. And then the next level, that other like side, is the financial independence where you're trying to optimize the system, maybe exit the workforce, invest aggressively. So where are you on that? Like, what do you want to reach financial independence? What does that journey look like for you?
The simple answer would be yes. The more complex answer would be, I guess, yes now, but maybe in 5 years I'll think about it and maybe it'll be no. But yeah, so if you're a public servant in Canada, you have a pension. So I am building up a pension out of my paycheck and employer contribution, stuff like that. Something that it is invested. It's something that I don't touch. And I've made some calculations right now with if I retire at the air quote normal retirement age, I would be receiving at least 6 figures until I die, which is solid. And then there's an option to also retire early in that paperwork, which is 55. That 55 is the earliest age that you can retire. So this is an option.
Mm-hmm.
Would be nice. But that means that I have to get promoted, I guess, at a higher rate so that my pension grows more, which is something that I'm considering. I am trying to get promoted this year, so hopefully that happens in the next couple months. In terms of other investments, though, the answer is yes. My goal is to invest aggressively, though right now I am building up like a significant emergency pad, which I guess is the natural progression. You pay off your consumer debt and then you just feed your emergency savings a bit, more. The answer is yes. But in the short term, I'm also trying to plan like a small wedding. And I'm the type of person who's very focused. It's very hard for me to divide my attention. Internally, that's hard. And it makes it hard for me to reflect that on paper, even though, yes, my transactions are automated and all that stuff. I like to just look at one thing and it's like, okay, this is what I'm trying to achieve under this timeline, so on and so forth. The answer is yes, it would be great, but I think I just need to get to the next step first. So right now, I'm hoping to meet my emergency savings goal at the end of December. And then I will just sit down in January and be like, okay, where am I allocating that money that was going to the emergency fund, to a TFSA, that's tax-free savings, or an FHSA, that's first home buying savings account. Currently, these are both invested. They get like pennies. Like I put like $25 in it biweekly. It's very nothing. It's just for the sake of saying like, yes, I'm investing, getting into the habit of it.
Yeah. It honestly sounds like you're on track to pay off your student loan debt and still building up your emergency fund at the same time and planning for a wedding. Like, I think that's a lot, and I look at that as almost like the fallback. Like if nothing else changes, right? Like my fallback is staying in this job where I have a pension.
Yes.
Which to me is like, it's a great fallback if nothing else happens, but there are so many opportunities for you just because you're doing the work. And the more you do, the more you kind of climb that ladder towards financial independence, the more you have more options to change your mind.
Yes. Thank you. This is what I was trying to illustrate. And privilege check. But yes, worst case scenario, I just have my pension. And it's not just because Social Security is disappearing. But yeah, I would like to have more options. And if I can leave public service and have a second career that doesn't have that level of security or that doesn't have a pension, then I'd be happy to explore that. It's not I haven't given it much thought though, but the option is there.
Right. Keep your options open. And that is the beauty of this journey, is that the more you do, the progress you make just unlocks different levels that before were not available to you. You wouldn't be comfortable making certain decisions. And again, you're going to evolve in what you want in life and you can change your mind. And so all that can change. It's just having the foundation though gives you such a great platform to launch from.
Or even like having the option to go on sabbatical. Like I'm not necessarily retiring early, but I can afford to just take a year, run an ultra marathon, I don't know, do an extravagant hiking trip, something like that. Like my reward pathway in my brain changed a lot paying off debt because now I'm seeing that money that was going to high interest debt as an opportunity. I'm like, okay, well, technically this money can do things that I hadn't actually considered because I was literally stuck in high interest debt and I had to pay it off faster than it was racking interest. That's the biggest shift. I thought that money was complicated. It was niche. I didn't understand anything. I was air quote bad at it. You see that a lot in personal finance. But no one's really bad at money. You can learn how to understand the rules of the game. And if you apply yourself, if you have the time to do that, then I think everyone can learn and everyone can understand FI and consider it and look at their money with a lens of what options does my money give me? Because it's really what it is.
Right. And I think for so many people, it's like that fear, the overwhelm, the feeling like they're not capable, not having like that growth mindset and confidence in yourself is such a big deal, which is why a lot of it is mindset. It like starts from internally. And it's not to say you can't feel fear, you can't feel shame. I think we all have it. I still have it. It is just that idea that, I can figure this out, or I'll be okay if I, trust in the process and trust in myself. So I hope that is encouraging to other journeyers listening. And the one thing or the other thing I want to ask you about before we sign off is just, do you have any advice or tips for someone listening right now about your journey?
Yes. I think if I had to talk to myself back then when I was avoiding my consumer debt was rooted in shame. I was like, why am I in this situation again? By the way, I threw a party for paying off my credit card debt and I invited all my girlfriends and it was really fun. But yeah, for people listening who are early on in their journey, even if you're not in consumer debt, but if you are, debt doesn't have a moral value. If you have debt, it's one part of your story that you can keep writing in whatever direction that you want to keep writing it in. There's no good debt or bad debt in my opinion. It's all debt is predatory and it's mostly like how do you utilize it to achieve what you want? Or if you want to get rid of it, then it's mostly like how do you chip at it little by little. And then for other people listening who may not be in debt but feel like you don't really know where to start, I always say everything is a running allegory. To start, you just have to start. You put on your shoes, you go outside, you run for a minute, take a walking break. And then you run again and you take a walking break. And it might be messy. You might start today and then you read one chapter or you open like Investopedia or you open Wealthsimple if you're Canadian and you close it and you don't look at it for like 30 days, 60 days, but you still have that now and you can build on that. And I think small actions, they add up and it's true. And this is also a running allegory. If you're training for a marathon, if you're training for a half marathon, what this amounts to is all the little training runs that you put together until race day. And it's cliche, but it's cliche maybe because it's true. It's all these little decisions that make these big changes in your life. And take pride. Talk about it. I think young women, there's so much taboo. I asked my fiance, like, how did you learn to invest? Like literally through thin air. And he's like, I was just asking my friends. And it's just cis men, they just talk about this stuff. My little brother, he's 18. He's like, oh yeah, he's turning 18 in July. He's like, I can't wait to turn 18 so that I can start day trading. I'm like, what? This is such a guy thing to say. Women don't say that. And I just wish it would change. I think it's changing. All the personal finance books that I read are written by women. I think Jesse's book is the only exception. Shout out Jesse, Zero Based Budget. And I will be reading J.L. Collins' book. It's on hold right now at the library. But yeah, that was a mouthful, but I think that's what comes to mind.
No, I mean, those are, I hope everyone was taking notes. That was actually really great tips and insight. And I love the running comparisons because I also am a runner. So I think that's so spot on.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. I ran 2 half marathons so far. It's funny because each time I run it, I'm like, never doing that again. But I do, if you go back and listen to other episodes where I first started running, it was like, oh, I can't stand this. But I do enjoy, the confidence that I get from it. And just like you said, I find the pushing yourself, and it doesn't have to be running if you're not a runner, just anything you're taking on that's different, that's new or challenging to you, it feels bigger when you're first doing it. But as you start doing it, you'll start to see like, wow, this is something I can do. And the confidence will help push you through. So keep at it.
Yes, totally agree. It's like baking. I also bake. And I think back the first time I made a cookie, it's like the simplest thing. But now I see like a more complex cake and I was like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. But it really is rooted in all the practice and it's just like, okay, let me try to improve a little bit, small improvements. And then it builds up.
Yes, Les. Lori, thank you so much for coming on the show and being open, sharing your experience. Thank you for being a journeyer. And I know that this episode will help a lot of people. And we need to do like an update in maybe a year or a couple years on your journey and what's new.
I would love that.
But thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jamila. I really appreciate it. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Don't forget, you can get the episode show notes for this episode by going to journeytolaunch.com or click the description of wherever you're listening to this. And you can still grab your Jumpstart Guide for free to help you on your journey to financial freedom by going to journeytolaunch.com/jumpstart. If you want to support me and the podcast and love the free content and information that you get here are 4 ways that you can support me and the show. 1, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Apple Podcasts, that purple app on your phone, your Android device, YouTube, Spotify, wherever it is that you happen to listen, just subscribe so you are not missing an episode. And if you're happening to listen to this in Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe there. I appreciate and read every single review. Number 2, follow me on my social media accounts. I'm at Journey to Launch on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I love interacting with journeyers there. 3, support and check out the sponsors of this show if you hear something that interests you. Sponsors are the main ways we keep the podcast lights on here, so show them some love for supporting your girl. 4, and last but not least, share this episode, this podcast with a friend or family member or coworker so that we can spread the message of Journey to Launch. All right, that's it. Until next week, keep on journeying, journeyers.